Hello everyone, and welcome back to another exciting chess game from the history of chess. And I'd like to show you the match between Henry Edward Bird and Emanuel Lasker. I will show you the key games from this match. So this is game number 1. And let me tell you the story why this match happened. So after defeating Jack Maces, Emanuel Lasker crossed the English Channel and went to England, only to challenge one of the leading chess players in England. His main objective was to play with Isidore Gansberg and Joseph Henry Blackburn. But unfortunately none of those players were available. So because of that, Emanuel Lasker, instead of playing with Blackburn or Gansberg, he played with Henry Edward Bird, who was also one of the leading British chess masters at the time. But Gansberg and Blackburn was Emanuel Lasker's main objectives, but that didn't happen. So let's see what happened in this chess game. Only for the records, at this time Henry Edward Bird was 60. He was 60 years old, and interesting enough, but Emanuel Lasker was 20 years old. So there was 40 years age difference, 40 years gap between Lasker and Henry Edward Bird. Interesting, isn't it? So the first player who scores the 7th win is going to be victorious in this match. They were not counting the draws. And let's see what happened. So in this first game, Henry Edward Bird has the white pieces, and the challenger, Emanuel Lasker, who was 20 at the time, has the black pieces. So let's see what happened. Henry Edward Bird starts the game with pushing the f-pawn. And what is this move? This is a flank opening. This is the Bird opening. Henry Edward Bird plays his own opening. But actually before Henry Edward Bird, this opening was played many times in the history of chess. In the 1500s, it's that old. So in the 1500s, we see the records of this opening. And also after 1500s, chess players like Labordonnais, who played before Henry Edward Bird, he also played this opening, and Eliaf Williams also played the Bird opening. But Henry Edward Bird popularized this opening, so this is why we know this as the Bird opening. He played this for 40 years in his chess career, obsessively, which is not unsound, but it's not preferred in nowadays, because of weakening the king side slightly. Okay, so we have f4 by Henry Edward Bird, d5 by Emanuel Lasker, which is the most common reply to the Bird's opening. e3, g6, knight to f3, and fianchetto the bishop on g7, c3, knight to f6. So we can say that Bird's opening is little bit clunky, which is not preferred. Knight to a3, Lasker castled, bishop to e2, bishop to e2, a6, and also Henry Edward Bird castled. Knight to c6, knight to c2, relocating the knight, rook to e8, knight to e5, and exchanging the knights, damaging the pawn structure. After retreating the knight, Bird pushed the d-pawn, and this is a miracle, but actually white is doing fine according to the chess engine. And this is pretty decent position for white. f6, but Emanuel Lasker is immediately challenging the center. And we have knight to b4, attacking the d-pawn, defending, e takes on f6. But now, Emanuel Lasker captured the pawn, e takes on f6, and with this move he opens the e-file and he is targeting the e-pawn with his angry looking rook, showing teeth to the e-pawn with the rook. Also, at any time Lasker can play bishop to h6 and targeting the pawn also with the bishop. He can add the queen into the attack. And you can see that Henry Edward Bird has some weaknesses in his position. b3, bishop to e6, knight to d3, bishop to f7, queen to e1, knight back, queen in, and already Lasker is targeting the pawn And at the correct time he can play bishop to h6 and attacking the e-pawn. So that is the big weakness of Henry Edward Bird. Now Lasker played rook from a to c8. Maybe he can push the c-pawn, a4, c6, bishop to d2, g4 by Lasker. g4. So why g4? Probably 60 years old Henry Edward Bird could not find a good move in this position. He couldn't find any move. So he pushed the pawn in front of the king. So if you don't have a good reason, don't push the pawn in front of the king. So Lasker is attacking the pawn, defending with the queen, exchanging the pawns, and destroying the pawn cover in front of the king. And what did Henry Edward Bird achieve? Nothing. So this is okay. As you can see, the king side is looking vulnerable for Bird. Knight to f6, defending the queen, but now a perfect spot for the knight. Lasker played knight to e4. Lifting the rook. Bird is planning an attack from the king side. But let's take it back. Okay, in this position you can't move the bishop. You can play something like bishop to c1. Then knight takes on c3. So if something like bishop to e1, what happens in this position? Consider this as a small daily chess puzzle. White actually can't dislodge the bishop. And bishop is very important, so the bishop is holding the position of Bird. If black can take the bishop, it is going to fall apart. So, but why can't you do this move? Defend the bishop and defending the c3 pawn. If I give you 3 seconds, can you guess the next move of black? So consider this as a daily chess puzzle. Okay, so did you find this move? Knight takes on c3. If bishop takes on c3, then queen takes, bank, and attacking the knight as well. If something like knight to f2, defending, but this time capturing the bishop, and white's position is falling apart. It is very difficult to hold this position together. So Bird has holes, weaknesses. On the other hand, Lasker is solid. He is rock solid. So lifting the rook, also defending the e-pawn, more defense, but now adding the bishop into the attack. The bishop joins the party. But now knight to e5, Lasker is attacking the annoying knight, knight backs, and repeating the moves actually for 3 times. But I don't know if there was threefold repetition back then. So there was no draw. Lasker played a different move, rook to c7, c4, exchanging the pawns, but now here comes bank, c5, the best move by Lasker. White can't push the pawn, white can't take the pawn, the d-pawn is pinned, because if moving the pawn, then from this long diagonal, the bishop is aiming the rook, and bishop takes rook is possible. So we have knight to f4, and Lasker is smashing in. Knight takes on d2. Queen takes on d2 and queen in. Defending the rook. But now as you can see, white's position is falling apart from the center. C takes on d4 and knight to d5. Of course, if e takes on d4, then bishop takes on d4, check, and this is losing for white. So knight to d5. But then, bang, rook takes on c4. Queen to g2. And now in this position, Bird was hoping that Lasker is going to capture the knight with the queen. And if capturing the knight with the queen, that is going to be a blunder. He was hoping, he was begging, he was praying for it. But Lasker did not blunder, unfortunately for Bird. Lasker captured the pawn, which was the best move. So in this position, what happens if capturing the knight? If queen takes on d5, then rook to f8, check. And this is going to be a discovery attack to the queen. Rook takes on f8 and queen takes queen. And actually black can safely resign. Black is losing. and that is a disaster for black. But of course Lasker was very strong, so he didn't do that blunder. He didn't capture the knight, and he captured the pawn. D takes on e3. Which was the best move? Knight takes on e3, rook to c3, knight to d5. Well, rook to f8 is still not working because of bishop takes on f8, rook takes on f8, but king takes on f8 and defending the queen. So there is no discover attacks to the queen. So okay, after rook to c3 we have knight to d5, rook takes on f3, simplifying the game, checking the king and capturing the queen, and checking the king with the rook, king to g2, checking the king and capturing one more pawn. And Lasker has 3 pawns and Bird is 3 pawns down, and this is losing for Bird. But Bird is going after Lasker's pawns. But Lasker is easily defending rook to b2, attacking the bishop, defending rook to c3, defending the bishop, a5. But now checking the king, of course king to g1 is not possible, because then rook to c2, check, king to e1, and then bang, rook to f5, and actually there is no reasonable defense for the knight. And this is why in this position, not just because of that, but also because of being 3 pawns down, Henry Edward Bird resigned. Well, a pretty accurately played chess game by Emanuel Lasker against 60 years old Henry Edward Bird. So this was the first chess game between Bird and Lasker, and actually this was the first ever chess game of Dr. Lasker against a British chess master. So let me show you the possible continuation. If knight to c7, actually if moving the knight, if defending, then bishop to b4, and this is pinning the rook to the king. You can't move the knight because of that. And if knight to e3, then this time pinning the knight to the king, moving the king, bishop takes on e3, a takes on b6, bishop takes on b6, and this is also losing for white. Black is a piece up, plus black has 3 extra pawns, and this endgame is losing for white. And thank you very much for watching. So this was the last move of the first game, and Lasker is leading with 1 extra point. So I hope to see you next time with the other games from this match. So take care, stay safe, and bye bye.